This is Focus on Africa from BBC World News. I'm Sophie Ikenye. Our top stories. Today marks 1 month since the crash of Ethiopian Airlines Flight 302. People are still coming to terms with their loss.
That was the darkest moment in my life.
From Lusaka to London, why villagers from Zambia are taking their compensation claims against a mining company to Britain. Also in the program, a national emergency. Recorded rapes rise in Sierra Leone. We hear from those affected in Freetown.
I met a man who said that he wanted to buy all the stock of granules that I was selling. He asked me to go inside his room for the money. As I did, he raped me. He deflowered me.
And in sports, it's about to kick off in just over an hour. The mouth-watering Champions League tie between Manchester United and Barcelona. Thanks for joining us on Focus on Africa from BBC World News. It's been precisely 1 month since Ethiopian Airlines flight ET302 crashed, killing all 157 people on board. Now, in total, there were passengers and crew from 33 countries. About 200 people, including religious leaders, families of the victims, airline representatives and members of the government, attended a ceremony at the headquarters of the United Nations in Addis Ababa to mark the day. At least 45 aid workers, peacekeepers or staff of international organizations, including 21 people who worked at the UN, died in the crash. Well, a preliminary report on the accident issued last week said the pilots performed all procedures recommended by the manufacturer, but still failed to save the plane. Now, the accident has thrown the American company Boeing into crisis mode, as it could potentially lead to huge financial losses. As the BBC's Emmanuel Igunza reports, families of those who died are still coming to terms with their losses.
John Karanja is a man still struggling to accept the death of his wife, daughter and 3 grandchildren. The family of 5 who had been living in Canada were headed to Kenya for the Easter holidays. They never made it. All died in the doomed flight ET302 that crashed in Ethiopia a month ago, killing all on board. With no bodies yet to bury, he's erected this memorial stone in their memory.
It was maybe a few minutes to 6. That's when it was revealed to us the names of those that were victims of the crash. That was the darkest moment in my life.
157 people perished that day. A preliminary report released by Ethiopian authorities last week revealed that the pilots of the aircraft followed all the laid-down emergency procedures but failed to save it as it nosedived and crashed. Boeing has admitted that a malfunction in a key sensor apparently caused the crash of 2 737 MAX jets, as the plane's anti-stall system, MCAS, responded automatically to the wrong reading from the sensor. The Ethiopian Airlines disaster and a LEONE Air 737 MAX accident in Indonesia 5 months ago left a total of 346 people dead. Boeing's CEO says the company is working on changes to their system to restore trust.
Together, we'll do everything possible to earn and re-earn that trust and confidence from our customers and the flying public in the weeks and months ahead. Again, we're deeply saddened by and we are sorry for the pain these accidents have caused worldwide.
The giant American company has already announced a temporary cut in production of its best-selling jet. The decision is a response to a halt in deliveries of the 737 MAX, which is currently grounded worldwide. For relatives of those killed, the agony continues. Authorities in Ethiopia say it could take up to 6 months to conduct and finish DNA matching and allow families the opportunity to bury their loved ones. Others, including dozens of Kenyan families, have filed a lawsuit against Boeing in the US.
I'm not sure that there would be any amount of apology that one can give to replace a lost life. But it's a good step that the manufacturer is taking ownership But that is merely public admission. It's not necessarily legal admission.
John knows too well that loss, but he still holds on the hope he will one day bury his loved ones and have some sense of closure.
So this was done the first time, and they never rectify. So that's one is not considering the lives of human beings, but they consider the profit. So
you blame them?
I blame them. I blame them.
Emmanuel Gunza, BBC News, Nairobi.
Let's now take a quick look at other stories making headlines across Africa. Zimbabwe's President Emmerson Mnangagwa has pledged to exhume and rebury victims killed in a state crackdown in the 1980s. Up to 20,000 people were killed by security forces under the rule of Robert Mugabe in what has become known as the Gikarahundi massacres. Now, their bodies were stuffed down mine shafts and buried in mass graves. Now, in Algeria, the head of the army says he expects the judiciary to start prosecuting the country's ruling elite. Lieutenant General Ahmed Gaid Salah says the judiciary would launch proceedings into corruption, abuse of power and plundering of the country's resources. It follows the resignation of President Abdelaziz Bouteflika. An election has been set for July 4th. Now, South Sudan's warring rivals, President Salva Kiir and rebel leader Riek Machar, have been taking part in a retreat at the Vatican hosted by Pope Francis. It's aimed at finding a path to peace in the country. A man in central Kenya has earned praise on social media after he took it upon himself to dig a public road in his village. Nicholas Mushami says it took him 6 days to build the 1.5-kilometer road after he gave up waiting on the local leaders to do something about it. Now, nearly 2,000 villagers in Zambia have won the right to sue mining company Vedanta in the English courts. The villagers allege their land was polluted by the firm, and the UK Supreme Court has now ruled that the case can be pursued in Britain. And the decision raises the prospect that other companies could face legal action in England related to their activities abroad. Now, in a statement, Vedanta said the judgment of the UK Supreme Court is a procedural one and relates only to the jurisdiction of the English court to hear these claims. It is not a judgment on the merits of their claims. Vedanta and KCM will defend themselves against any such claims at the appropriate time. Well, joining me now is Oliver Holland. He is a solicitor at law firm Lide, which is handling this case. Thanks for taking time to talk to us on the program. What exactly is this company accused of specifically?
Well, we represent around 1,800 villagers in Zambia who live along a river called the Mushishima, just south of the Inchanga copper mine. And they say that the toxic effluent that comes from the copper mining processing area is entering their river. This river is relied upon for water, drinking water, irrigating farms, fishing, everything really. It's their source of livelihood, and they say it's being destroyed and has been for the last 10 or so years.
Has it impacted on them physically in any way because it's sulfuric acid?
They say yes, there's elements of sulfuric acid and other chemicals that are entering the river, and they're having to drink this water because some of them don't have any other access to water at all. So they say it's having an effect on their health, and some people are saying it's a very grave effect.
So this ruling is quite significant. Help us understand how significant it is.
Well, I think first and foremost it's very significant for our clients outside of anything else, any other wider effect, because these people have been suffering for a very long time and they have been unable to obtain justice in Zambia. And they came to us 4 years ago and said, can you look to try and bring this against the parent company in England? And we looked at that, and it's now been 4 years, this jurisdiction battle, which basically stays the substantive claim. So now we've overcome that with this judgment today, and we're now going to proceed with the actual substantive claim. So that's the most important thing. But outside of that, it's clarified the law in terms of parent company liability. Particularly important, I think, is that it's saying that where you have a UK parent company, UK corporate entity that has subsidiaries abroad, and it writes in its corporate literature that we take responsibility for environmental issues, health and safety issues, or whatever else, and it expects a subsidiary to implement those, even if they aren't implemented, or even if they have no other oversight over those policies, they just write them effectively, then they can potentially be held account in the English courts for that. And it's very important, because if you hold yourself out to take account for something, then maybe you should be.
Why couldn't the case be? Why couldn't Zambia itself take up the case?
Well, that was another important aspect of the judgment. So it was something that all courts that looked at this issue looked at whether the claimants would be able to obtain justice in Zambia, because obviously that would be the first port of call. And it's no criticism at all of the Zambian legal system, but there are certain aspects, practical aspects to representing this many claimants. It's a very costly thing for a lawyer to do, and they don't have the funding structure in Zambia for lawyers to be able to do that in the same way that we do here. So that was one aspect. There's also there's a lack of experience in handling these big group actions that can be very complex in terms of expert evidence and things like that. So our clients had tried to bring a case in the Zambian courts before, but hadn't been able to.
All right, Oliver Holland, thank you for bringing us up to speed.
Thank you.
On that story. Thank you. This is Focus on Africa from BBC World News with me, Sophie Ikenya. Still to come, all the sports, including Feyisa Lelisa is finally honored by the Ethiopian government 3 years after winning silver at the Olympic Games. I'm Sophie Ikenya, and you're watching Focus on Africa from BBC World News. The top stories on this program. A ceremony has been held at United Nations offices in Addis Ababa, marking exactly 1 month since the Ethiopian Airlines crash. All 157 people on board were killed. Nearly 2,000 villagers in Zambia have won the right to sue mining company Vedanta in English courts. The villagers allege their land was polluted by the firm. Now let's turn to Sudan, where demonstrations have entered a 5th day. Thousands of protesters are camping outside army headquarters. Protesters in the capital, Khartoum, demanding that the president, Omar al-Bashir, resigns. Police bosses have ordered officers not to intervene against the demonstrators. In the meantime, President al-Bashir's supporters have called a rally to show support for the embattled leader who's been in power for 3 decades. Now, it's been described as a national emergency, and Sierra Leone is struggling to deal with it. Recorded rapes and sexual assaults have more than doubled over the last year. In February, President Bio announced that attacks on minors, which account for 1/3 of all cases, would be punished with a life sentence. But what impact will tougher sentences have on people taking advantage of those they believe to be vulnerable? Umaru Fofana sent this report from Freetown.
A year ago, this child could walk, but a brutal rape by a relative has left her paralyzed.
This little girl has become the symbol of the rape rage in this country, the embodiment that has brought this whole nation together to fight against what everyone agrees is a cancer eating into the society.
Doctors treating her at a maternity hospital say she has stabilized, but to get her to walk again, she has to be flown abroad.
The only challenge we have is, unfortunately for now, we have done all that we can as a hospital. We are constrained in terms of, the equipment and what more we can do, even the expertise as well. Her case is really specialized, and due to the fact that she can't move her legs, there's not much we can do at the moment.
Behind these walls, sexually abused children come to get succor. This 13-year-old girl is lulling her 1-month-old baby, the product of a rape allegedly by her own father, who is now in custody. Almost all children here have suffered one form of sexual assault or another.
I was 15 years old and times were very hard back at home. So my grandmother asked me that I should start hawking. So I said yes. I met a man who said that he wanted to buy all the stock of groundnuts that I was selling. He asked me to go inside his room for the money. As I did, he raped me. He deflowered me.
There are no surveys yet on why rape is so widespread in Sierra Leone, But this sociologist says certain trends should be looked at.
One thing is that we have weak institutions and laws that will hold perpetrators of rape accountable. Another trend again has to do with the rate at which poverty is increasing in the country.
Widespread poverty means many of these victims' families compromise with the perpetrators. This cubicle is the only referral clinic for them in Freetown. Workers are overwhelmed by the number of rape cases reported here daily.
It is quite high, concerningly high, because on average, we see on a daily basis maybe more than 10 to 15 cases a day here in Freetown. In terms of accessibility, it is very poor because of the limited number of centers that are available. Our biggest challenge is that we don't have DNA testing. We don't have a forensic lab in Sierra Leone.
In the eyes of these girls, men are evil. They illustrate that in their drawings, if only to drive away their trauma. Umaru Fofana, BBC News.
You're watching BBC Focus on Africa. Let's find out what's happening in the world of sport, Peter.
Many thanks, Sophia. And there's only one place to start today, and that's with the much-anticipated European Champions League quarter-final game between Manchester United and Barcelona. Kickoff is in just over an hour. United pulled off a huge win against Paris Saint-Germain in the last round and will be hoping for the same this weekend. But they'll be coming up against the irrepressible Lionel Messi and a Barcelona team that are 11 points clear in the Spanish La Liga. Former Ivory Coast captain Yaya Toure played for several years with Messi at Barcelona and says there is a reason why they are a top team.
Of course, Barcelona is a great team in the world, and Barcelona is always going to attract the great players, as well. Even his young talented or his experienced talented as well. Everybody wants to join Barcelona, want to be part of that, because Barcelona is the ultimate team at the moment, and it's the team who are using to win trophies, and they're always going until the semi-final, final of the Champions League. They always used to do that, and the fans always expect that for them. And I think Messi, for me, can go far. He can go further than that. The way he's playing and way he's this position in the field as well, number 10, force number 10. I think he can still play no longer.
In tonight's other game, Cristiano Ronaldo is likely to start for Juventus in their away game at Ajax Amsterdam after recovering from injury. Ronaldo, who has been nursing a thigh strain, has not played for Juve since he scored a hat-trick against Atletico Madrid in the last round of on 12th March. Now, last night, Liverpool beat FC Porto by 2-0. Guinea international Naby Keita repaid his manager's faith in him. Keita put Liverpool in front just in the 5th minute when his shot from the edge of the penalty was deflected in. It was the 24-year-old's second goal in 2 games, and manager Jurgen Klopp says things are beginning to fall in place for him.
I think Naby was a couple of times a bit unlucky with the first 1 or 2 situations, and had to find back in the game, if you want. Today it was from the start, it was immediately there. So we hoped all that will be like this, because the last game got better and better and better minute by minute, so we wanted to build on that. Looked really, really good tonight. All of them was really hard-working and good football playing, a lot of good passes. Not only the goal was brilliant, I loved it. It was deflected, yes, but the situation, how we did it, that was the half space we wanted to use, and boys did that really well, and so it was a really good performance.
In athletics, Ethiopia's Olympic marathon silver medalist Feyisa Lelisa has finally received his gift from the Ethiopian government. In an event organized at the Prime Minister's office last night, Feyisa received $17,000 prize money. Viewers may remember that Feyisa crossed his hands above his head as a sign of support for the Oromo protest as he finished the race in Rio de Janeiro in 2016. Afterwards, he sought asylum in the US and only returned home last year, where he was welcomed by a huge number of people at the airport. And finally, Los Angeles Lakers legend Magic Johnson has resigned from his job as the team's president of basketball operations. The Lakers have failed to reach the playoffs for the 6th year in a row. Johnson, who played a key role in bringing LeBron James to the team last year, broke the news before the 104-101 defeat by Portland Blazers. Johnson, a Hall of Famer, said he had grown tired of the backstabbing and the whispering this season. Will you be watching Barcelona versus Man United?
I won't answer that.
Okay. Okay. That's your sport.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, let's stay with sport for just a minute, because on Friday, the draw for the 2019 Africa Cup of Nations takes place in the Egyptian capital, Cairo. That's when the 24 teams will learn their fate. But things are already busy in Egypt, with people working around the clock to ensure the country is ready after replacing original hosts Cameroon at short notice. The BBC's Mohamed Kotib reports.
June's Africa Cup of Nations will be the biggest ever, with 24 teams in the tournament, up from 16 that played last time out. But Egypt has had very little time to prepare, named as hosts in January after Cameroon were stripped of the finals because of poor preparations.
5 months is a short time when it comes to organizing major sport events, but Egypt can organize such a tournament.
With infrastructure across the country already largely in place, the focus on Egypt's preparations lie elsewhere. A total of 4 cities will be used to stage matches: Cairo, Alexandria, Suez and Ismailia. Kickoff will be here in Cairo International Stadium on the 21st of June, a venue that hosted 3 previous finals in 1974, 1986 and in 2006. But this time, the challenge is quite different. That's because the venue has been largely unused since the Arab Spring of 2011, meaning extensive work is required. In the 3 other cities, just 1 stadium will be used, while Ismailia and Suez are undergoing relatively minor renovations. Those in Alexandria are anything but. With security inside Egyptian football stadiums being a serious issue, electronic gates could be key, along with tickets sold online, because this way Egyptian authorities can track the names of all those who enter.
Whether tickets will be sold online or not is tricky, because the short time left means it could be difficult to establish a proper online ticketing system.
After more than 70 fans died in the 2012 Port Said Stadium disaster, the government has largely banned spectators from attending local club games. Restrictions on spectators do not apply on continental games or international matches, however, yet there are relatively few of them, whereas the Cup of Nations is 52 games in just 31 days. So can the security forces cope?
We guaranteed the Confederation of African Football that we will fulfill all the requirements, and we are committed to doing this.
We asked the Ministry of Interior how they can guarantee security at the finals, but had not heard back by the time of publication. In the meantime, fans can't wait to return to the stadiums during the finals, instead of watching in local cafes, which have become the most popular viewing centers in recent years.
Mohamed Kutub reporting there. Now, just before we go, take a look at this. This is Hotel du Lac in Tunis. It was built in the 1970s and is now facing demolition. But the Star Wars fans among you might recognize its distinctive shape. Apparently, it was the inspiration behind the iconic sandcrawler ship. You can see the striking similarity. According to Tunis-based architect Mohamed Zitouni, Star Wars director George Lucas filmed part of his space fantasy in Tunisia and was inspired to draw a design for a sand tank similar to the shape of the hotel. Good things there. Don't forget, you can get in touch with me and some of the team, of course, on Twitter. I'm at Sekenya. But that's all for now from the program, from me and the rest of the Focus on Africa team. Thank you for your company.